Hi, I'm Rebecca and I'm the Psych coach. Today I'm going to be talking about the very important topic of self-confidence. Plenty of people say they have low self-confidence and are desperately trying to do what they can to improve it. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 proven tips to help you boost your confidence so you can feel better about yourself, enjoy life more and take on opportunities that come your way. Tip number 1 is act more confident than you feel. Some people might say that's fake it until you make it. Whatever you want to call it, the principle's the same. Even if you don't feel particularly confident, there is a huge benefit in you acting as if you're more confident than you feel. There's actually a bit of research, a reasonable amount of research, that says that if you carry yourself in a way that is more confident than you feel, you will eventually start to buy into that character a little more. So walk with purpose and act like you own the room, even if you don't feel like you do. Tip number 2 is give yourself a pep talk before you deal with difficult situations. A difficult situation might be confronting a family member about something that's tricky, or speaking to a colleague at work who you find particularly difficult to speak with, or maybe you need to do a public speech, or maybe you're going for an interview, or maybe you've got to have a conversation with a parent at school, or maybe you've got to speak to a teacher. There are so many scenarios where your confidence may take a bit of a knocking. And what happens is if we're nervous in a scenario, we will typically play out all the bad things that might happen in that exchange, which isn't particularly helpful because, of course, if you're playing out really negative scenarios, then you're going to feel even more anxious because the way you think affects how you feel. So if before you go into a difficult situation where you're not feeling particularly confident, you can give yourself a pep talk, which would go along the lines of, "This is difficult, but I can cope. I've coped before. This isn't that bad. It's only a 5-minute encounter and it will be over with, or it's only a half-minute presentation and it will be over with. I know I'm equipped to deal with this situation." If you can tell yourself those things, you will calm yourself down a little bit more, which means you will be able to deal with the difficulty with a bit more ease. So give yourself a pep talk. Sometimes people find that really hard and say that they just can't access that rational voice in their head. So then it can be really useful to think, okay, what would my friend say to me in this scenario? What would my role model say to me? What would my mentor say to me? What would my parents say to me in this scenario? Think of someone whose opinion really matters to you and think about what they would be telling you. Sometimes thinking about it in a third person can make it easier to give yourself the pep talk. Either way though, give yourself a pep talk, whether it's you to yourself or using an imagined person that's in your life talking to you, and tell yourself about your ability to cope and how you can get through the situation. Tip number 3 is practice self-acceptance thinking. Self-acceptance isn't where you tell yourself you're the best thing since sliced bread. It's not where you tell yourself I'm amazing. You know, if you want to tell yourself that, great. But the reality is most people are a long way off from being able to tell themselves that. But self-acceptance thinking is where you recognise that as a human being, you're fallible. That means you make mistakes. You don't do things that are particularly good all the time. You might fail at tasks. You might, not always be liked by everyone. Well, we know that's going to be true because none of us are. But we're fallible, aren't we? We make mistakes. None of us are wholly perfect. None of us are wholly good. And that's just part and parcel of being a human. We're complex. We've got good bits, bad bits, and everything else in between. And self-acceptance is basically recognising that the whole of you makes up you, and as a general rule, you're going to be an okay person. I think for a lot of people to get to the point where they can think, do you know what, I'm an okay person, is actually a big relief. We're not talking about you being the best person in the world, the most successful. It's just thinking, I'm okay as I am. And self-acceptance means thinking, I'm okay as I am, even if I fail at something, even if I get rejected at something, even if I don't do well at something, even if I make a mistake and I hurt someone. All of those things are inevitable if you're a human. And if you can practice self-acceptance, it means you will bounce back more quickly. And it means that you will be able to continue developing your self-confidence, because people who are confident don't tend to berate themselves about all the mistakes they make. So next time you make a mistake or fall short of your expectations or don't do something as well as you want to, see it as an opportunity to practice being self-accepting and to think, okay, I don't like that bit about myself, but it doesn't mean I'm a totally bad person or a failure. It just means I'm fallible, and that's one part of myself, and generally speaking, I'm okay. It's such a relief to get to the point where you can just think, I'm okay as a human being. Tip number 4 is capitalize on your strengths. That means doing the things you're good at, and if you can get away with it, leaving the things you aren't so good at. Part of positive psychology talks about the importance of utilising your strengths, recognising what your strengths are and utilising them, because people who utilise their strengths tend to be more confident because they're doing things they know they're good at, and they tend to be happier because we tend to be happier when we're doing things we're good at. So try and think about the qualities you've got that are strong for you. Maybe you're a particularly good listener. Maybe you're a particularly good team player. Maybe you're particularly good at a certain sport. Maybe you're particularly creative. Whatever it is, think about the things that you're good at and try and do as much of that in your life as possible. If you can get away with leaving your weaknesses or things that you're not as good at alone, then do that. Because often, if we're not particularly skilled at something, it will take up a lot of energy and can be a bit demoralising if we're continuing to do it and not improving. So focus on your strengths, remind yourself of your strengths, bring your strengths into your life as much as possible, and leave the things you're not so good at alone. If you're in a situation where you can't leave the things you're not good at alone because it's a really important part of your job, or I don't know, maybe you don't feel particularly good at socialising, and actually socialising is important to us, then you need to practice it, and then perhaps you can enlist the support of a friend to help you build up the skills to do those things. But generally speaking, utilise your strengths, leave the weaknesses alone, and that will help you feel more confident too. Tip number 5 is confront difficulty. If you're feeling unconfident, if you're feeling like you're not good enough to be doing something, chances are you'll want to avoid it. It's totally normal. It's a human reaction to want to avoid things that feel uncomfortable, either physically or psychologically. But the problem is, by avoiding, you fuel the idea of, I'm not good enough as I am, I am no good at doing those things, I should always avoid them. And by doing that, you make the problem worse. You make your lower confidence even lower, and you make whatever you're avoiding become more of a problem, because presumably you need to confront it at some point. There is such a benefit to confronting the things that you find difficult. And whilst you're doing them, again, going back to the point I made earlier about giving yourself a pep talk, reminding yourself of the fact you can cope with the difficulty. It feels uncomfortable, but it's bearable. And it's not about, are you going to sort of pass the test or not? It's simply about, if you've confronted something, no matter how well it turned out, you need to give yourself a pat on the back for having done it. That's what we call the no-lose principle. Fine, it might not have gone the way you want it, but you still haven't lost because you tried something and you confronted what you found difficult. There is no doubt that the more you avoid something and the more you shy away from it, the bigger a problem it will feel, and the more you chip away at your confidence. So try and challenge yourself to confront things that you find difficult bit by bit. Again, don't overwhelm yourself. Don't totally flood yourself with things that you find overwhelming. But bit by bit, if there's a party that you would typically avoid because you feel insecure about going, or if there's a job that you'd love to apply for but you feel you can't because you don't think you're good enough for it, or if there's someone that you want to be your friend but you don't want to ask them to hang out with you socially because it feels too challenging, try and confront those things and take on board the other things that I've said, because all of those will make the situation a lot easier. And either way, whatever the outcome, it doesn't matter. Pat yourself on the back because you confronted as opposed to avoid it. So to wrap up, put into practice acting more confident than you feel, giving yourself a pep talk before you deal with difficult situations, engage in self-acceptance thinking, capitalise on your strengths, and confront difficulty instead of avoiding it. As with all things, these things take practice. If you put these things into practice over the period of a week, it's not like you're suddenly going to be the most confident person in the world, but you will have started the journey of building your confidence. So do it bit by bit, start building your confidence, and then you'll start feeling more able to enjoy life and put yourself in situations that would otherwise be quite challenging for you. If you've enjoyed the tips from today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I will give you plenty of tips on how to use psychology to improve your day-to-day functioning.